So, you've been shunned. Maybe you were disfellowshipped for smoking a cigarette, or maybe you just couldn't stand to live a lie anymore and sent in your letter of disassociation. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. You've lost your friends, you've lost your family, your entire support system has been taken from you. This is not the shunning that many experience in grade school from bullies who don't like you because you don't fit in. Religious shunning is absolute. They look through you as if you weren't there at all, as if you were dead.
If it is hard for her, then maybe she'll come back.
And now you must move on. Now you're out in the real world on shaky feet, trying to navigate complex social constructs you don't understand. And you may be finding that, to a degree, shunning is part of human nature. We see it at the workplace. We avoid people who are troublemakers or don't perform as well, instead choosing to associate with those climbing ladders or in places of power. In school, if you weren't cool enough or good-looking enough, you could find yourself alone at a table during lunch. When we go through a breakup, that person we often experience an intense emotional connection with ceases to exist. Sometimes we do it as a point of exhaustion. You know, when you see an old acquaintance at the grocery store and you just don't have the energy to make face with them right now. They see us and they light up, but we turn our head. We pretend that we never saw them. When we see them again, we might continue to shun them for no particular reason at all, other than the shame and lack of explanation for shunning them before. We do it on social media with people we disagree with. And you may be asking yourself, where is the line between any of these examples of shunning and the religious shunning we survived before? When, if ever, is it okay? Sometimes we're so worried about inflicting what we went through upon someone else that we overcorrect. We refuse to do anything that even slightly resembles shunning. And we may be keeping people in our lives regardless of the harm they may be inflicting on us. The first time you walk into a Kingdom Hall is a surreal, blissful experience. Outside is a world where everyone goes about their business and leaves each other alone. But when you walk through those doors for the first time into a fluorescent lit room with no windows and music softly playing in the background, all eyes are on you. Everyone is smiling. They don't know who you are, but they're so happy to see you. You're surrounded with handshakes and hugs, bids of welcome, and it feels like love. After you've been love-bombed, your previous support networks are slowly eroded away until one day, all you have are these people in this room, this brotherly love, a love that was so overwhelming at first, but now that you've been baptized, it's withdrawn. It's conditional, and it turns out you don't get along with all of these people after all, but they're all that you have, so you walk delicately to avoid stumbling them. You don't say anything controversial because once you're in, you know. You know that it only takes one misstep and you could lose everything. Your family, these friends in this room, and you will have nothing left because you have nothing else. And when you make that misstep, and it's time for your exile, they make an announcement on the stage. You are no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The room goes quiet, the air chills as everyone takes a breath, and you cease to exist to every last one of them. Until, at least, you prove yourself again. This is the way that religious shunning works. It is set up to seize control of your social networks and support systems so that it can keep you under control. Narcissistic abuse works the same way, and this should come as no surprise because most organized religions with cultish tendencies are designed and ran by narcissists. The cycle goes like this: idealization, devaluing, and discarding. The relationship begins with an otherworldly whirlwind of infatuation as they love bomb you. It's just like walking into that Kingdom Hall for the very first time. You are being loved and recognized like you've never been before. Finally, someone sees you the way you want to be seen. Eventually, though, the high wanes and the narcissist begins to withdraw. Just as when you were baptized, once they feel they have control over you, your efforts henceforth are devalued. You feel that you must try harder to please them because you want that initial high back. And while they may occasionally acknowledge your efforts, you are left perpetually feeling that you aren't good enough, which is just as well to them because the entire point is to keep you working and working harder. And when you slip up, the punishment is swift and absolute. The narcissist discards you and launches a smear campaign to turn as many people against you as they can until you are isolated and ostracized. Even though a part of you was always aware of the possibility of this happening, the moment it does is always shocking and you're left spinning with confusion as all of your allies turn against you. What's often overlooked about the cycle is the fact that you're wary of shunning after it's happened to you is part of the abuse. You know it's abusive, so you're unlikely to use the tool that's most effective against people who exhibit these patterns of abuse. Gray rocking. Gray rocking is a method used to defend against and slowly detach from narcissistic abuse once it's been identified. On the surface, it looks a lot like shunning. Essentially, you are withdrawing from a person with the goal of cutting them off completely. The method, however, is completely different. You make yourself a gray rock in that you're trying to blend in and become as boring as possible to your abuser until they lose interest in you and move on. You don't feed them with any reaction to their games. You give them nothing to work with. You become perfectly still as the predator moves on, and then you go no contact. It's the single safest way to withdraw from abusive personalities without attracting their wrath. It's similar to the method faders use to escape the religion. They refuse to bow to the power the religion tries to hold over them, while also recognizing that the religion could cause utter destruction upon them if provoked. But when you're sensitive to shunning, that final step feels the same. Shouldn't we give them the benefit of the doubt? Shouldn't we give them room to grow? Well, my soft-hearted friend, that's the goodness in your heart talking, and that goodness is a vulnerability to abusive personalities. They are counting on you to feel this way, so that ultimately you come back and you agree to having even less power than you had before. Yay, let's go giving second chances. Religious and narcissistic shunning function the same way. They are systems set in place to keep you under control. It's a punishment that is achieved by seizing control of your support systems without you noticing it, then using the withdrawal of those systems to manipulate you into compliance. Going gray rock is a defense. It's a boundary you lay to protect yourself and a refusal to acknowledge the power your abuser attempts to wield over you. While abusive shunning is done with the intent to starve you until you come back, gray rock is walking away for good. Once you slink through that door unnoticed, you lock it behind you and throw away the key. So when you're facing cutting someone out of your life, you need to ask yourself this question. Am I doing this to protect my mental or physical health? Or am I doing this to punish them? Am I walking away and moving on with my life, or am I trying to turn all of their friends against them? Am I trying to ruin their reputation? Have I cut off lines of communication with a person only so that they cannot defend themselves against what I'm saying about them? If your motives are more about bringing someone down than rising yourself up, you may need to do some self-examination.
Okay, cool. But what about the internet? Blogging people is shunning people. You can leave the cult, but the cult doesn't leave you.
The need to distance yourself from people isn't always necessarily rooted in these categories, though. On social media in particular, there's a lot of debate on whether cutting someone off due to a difference in opinion is really all that different from what high control religions do. There are people who take pride in not having a single person on their block list. Check this out, look at my block list. And then there are people who just block indiscriminately. There are a lot of complex facets to this, not the least of which being so-called cancel culture, which is the subject of a whole nother video on a completely different channel. An argument could be made that you cannot change the minds of people you refuse to speak to, and while there may be some truth to that, I can't help but ask, Is it really your personal responsibility to change a person's mind? I know that you may feel compelled to do so, that it's the right thing to do so, but we are no longer evangelicals. Our value as human beings no longer hinges on how many people convert to our way of thinking. Of course, there are exceptions to this. You may feel compelled to combat harmful ideas, either with someone you care about or on a platform to a general audience without direct contact like we do here on YouTube. Or it may really just be friendly debate among friends. It's all good. That's up to you to decide. But when a friendly debate becomes heated and lines are drawn in the sand, it must be understood that sometimes there is a difference between conflict of opinion and conflict of core values. A conflict of opinion is, well, I hated The Last Jedi. You think it was the best Star Wars film that was ever made. We argue about it over dinner, then we go out for drinks afterward. No big deal. Wait, that is how Star Wars arguments go, right? Maybe I chose a bad example. But a difference in values is much harder to reconcile, and no one gets to dictate to others what core values they're allowed to consider important in the people they choose to associate with. This is particularly important for people who come from less privileged minorities, who have often spent their whole lives fighting for their rights. What may be just playing devil's advocate to one person, a fun debate to a hypothetical problem, let's talk about racism, to another person, they're completely exhausted with defending themselves over this. That simple difference in opinion wounds them, it hurts them, they're exhausted. They don't want to put up with this from their friends and associate. When they get off of work, they want to relax. They want to shut off the rest of the world and have a good time. And if you find that your friends are draining you and constantly testing that line in the sand, it's fully within your right to distance yourself from them. This all comes down to the ability to set, enforce, and respect boundaries. This is another key social skill that is lost in cultish communities. Now that you are free, you are able to decide what you're okay with and what you're not. Who gets a seat in your living room? You may enjoy having friends over with different backgrounds for intelligent, respectful debate. Friends that listen when they're not speaking and consider what they're being told. You may not want to debate at all. You may not want crazy Uncle Joe over who just wants you to sit there and listen to his racist rhetoric all evening. Lay a boundary. Uncle Joe, this isn't welcome here, and if you don't stop, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And if you're Uncle Joe, you need to recognize that a boundary has been drawn, and you have to respect that. Remember back at that Kingdom Hall, all of those brothers and sisters, your friends, your best friends, simply because you shared the same religion and happened to be assigned to the same kingdom halls. These people you kept face with and you tiptoed around because they were the only friends you were allowed to have, and crossing even one of them could result in losing all of them. Guess what? You are not in a kingdom hall anymore. We are not all obligated to be friends. There's a huge world out there of people with interests just like yours that get your sense of humor. Go and find them. You're going to run into people you don't like along the way, but that's the best part about freedom. You are not obligated to keep them in your life. On the other hand, again, you are not in a kingdom hall anymore, and that also means that others are not obliged to conform to your expectations. Let go of stumbling block mentality, black and white thinking, insistence on conformity. There will always be people you don't get along with and don't see eye to eye with, and the best thing to do with those irreconcilable differences is to simply move on from them. To recap, healthy shunning is drawing a boundary. It is done to protect your physical or your mental health. It is accepting that a person doesn't fit in with what you're cultivating your life to be and moving on from them. This could be either due to abusive behavior or irreconcilable difference in core values. And above all, it is done out of respect for yourself. Abusive shunning is done to punish someone. It is manipulative. It often involves drawing in other people in attempt to smear or further punish a person. The intention of the punishment is either to ruin a person or to isolate them until they feel they have no choice but to conform to what you want and come crawling back to you. Unfortunately, when you are raised in a religion that practices shunning, a lot of these abusive behaviors are deeply ingrained in us. If you notice any of these behaviors in yourself, that's a good thing. It means that you are becoming more self-aware and have identified something in you that you need to work on. Chances are every single one of us are guilty of doing this at some point in our lives. The point is to identify the behavior and eliminate it. On the other hand, if you are a person that feels guilty for eliminating someone from your life that was genuinely harmful, either through direct abuse or simply because your differences and values were too draining to carry on, Don't feel guilty for putting yourself first. If you grew up in a spiritually abusive environment or with an abusive person in your life, you have always put yourself last. Making that first affirmative step that you are going to respect yourself and maintain your boundaries takes incredible bravery, and you should be proud. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to do all the things YouTubers ask you to do. Subscribe, bell, like, comment, all that stuff. If you'd like to support my channel, check out patreon.com/mentallydisease. My videos are frequently flagged by YouTube, and your support helps to keep me going. Until next time, stay awake.